This lecture provides an overview of lab number 11, in which you're going to create your table 1, which is your table of descriptive statistics. So let's go ahead and look at the lab. At the end of this lab, you should be able to know how to generate descriptive statistics in Excel, create a table of descriptive statistics in a Word document, and interpret descriptive statistics. So the first thing you're going to do is to create the table of descriptive statistics. And this is what it should look like in the end. And you can certainly just go ahead and copy and paste this. It's just a Word document that will be available to you. It's actually available right now in the lab, and you can copy and paste that into a new Word document. So what does it look like? Well, you have some descriptive name that makes it clear what the table shows. And then you write this standard deviations in parentheses, and then that's what you have. You have your y variable, the mean, the standard deviation underneath in parentheses, your x1 variable, the same information, and then your number of countries. And then you have your source or sources. Okay, so this little one, let's see what that footnote says. That says usually you don't need a heading if it's all of your observations. You don't have to say all because it's obvious. But next week you'll add a few columns, so you might as well have one now. That's going to help you. We're going to add to this table next week. Okay, so you already should have the analysis sample set up in your spreadsheet, and this just says that make sure that the statistics you report are for the same sample. That includes all and only countries that have all 3 variables. Okay, so this is set up that as you go along you can check off what you've done. So the first thing you need to do is to copy your analysis sample and move it onto a new worksheet. And so if you look at this sample, you'll see how that will look, and I've got it right here. So remember, you have this figure. So what you can do is just copy and paste all of your data like this. So I'm going to copy it. There's a lot of it. Well, actually I already did this, so boom. Okay, I labeled this tab Analysis Sample Table 1, and then I copied it over here. Then I got rid of that extra y variable column. Okay, so what do we do next according to the lab? 2, find the mean and standard deviation. So under the Data tab in Excel, it says click on Data Analysis on the far right side of the menu. Okay, so let's look at what it should look like on your lab computer. So I'm going to click Data here, and right here there should be a Data Analysis option. Okay, I don't have it because I'm using a Mac, but it should be there. And if it's not there, it says follow instructions provided in the handout and available in this week 12 learning module. So we'll have the handout that will show you, and if I'm lucky I set it up here. I did. So this is what it will look like. In the Data tab it will show up as Data Analysis. And if you don't have it, then what you have to do is from the File menu, you have to choose Options, Add-ins, and then this Analysis Tool Pack, Excel Add-ins, and Go. And again, we'll have the sheet available for you if it's not there. And then say, okay, it's very needy. It needs a lot of reassurance that you really want to do it. And then the data analysis will show up. So after you highlight your data, you wouldn't click on histogram. You'd click on descriptive statistics, click OK, and then you'll get something that looks like that. Let me make it bigger. Okay, so that's what your table will look like. Now this isn't really great as a table. It's got too much information. In terms of Tufte, it repeats things over and over. It doesn't make much sense, so you have to work with that a little bit. Okay, and this gives instructions for what to do if you have a Mac. It's a pain, but it's still doable. Okay, so this is what you get. Delete all information except mean, standard deviation, and count. That's the number of observations. So you can go through and do that. I think you probably know how to do that, so I won't waste your time to show you that. Correct the decimal places. So remember how to do that. You can choose the column. Actually, you're going to want to do it. It's going to be, no, you can choose the column. No, let's do it one by one. So the mean for life expectancy, that should have, okay, I'm going to go back home. And then over here, I can reduce the number of decimals to 1. Okay. For the GDP per capita, that's a big dollar number, so I want the comma, and then I want no decimals. Okay, and for health expenditures, that's a percent, so I want 1 decimal. So you can do that. And then the standard deviation should follow the same decimal rule, and then these are just numbers, so you don't want to have a decimal on the count. Okay, what does it say to do next? Rearrange in the format provided at the beginning of this section. Or what do I mean by that? Okay, well, it has to be set up so that the variable names are in the columns. All right, so how would you do that in Excel? I think I did it over here. I just moved things around. So I have life expectancy in one row with the year, and then I put the standard deviation underneath. So here's one thing that's annoying in Excel. It's hard to get it to be, I want to have parentheses around here. And so I recommend that you just take this whole thing and then copy and paste it into a Word document. Okay, so let's open a new Word document, and we would put it there. Okay, to start. And then what you're going to do is you're going to need to reformat so that it looks like this. Or the other option is just to copy this in and then just copy in those 6 or 7 numbers. That shouldn't be too laborious. Okay, so are we done? Save it and upload it to your group file exchange. Okay, of the Excel, copy the table and paste it into a Word document, make it look nice, follow all the principles from Tuesday and lectures. Okay, and then you'll save that Word document in your group file exchange. Okay, that's, to some extent, that's the easy part. The harder part is doing the thinking about it, interpreting the descriptive statistics. So let's just go through this. When you include a table in a paper, you must write about it too. The rule is that your table must be able to stand alone, and the text must be able to stand alone. That means that your reader gets all the relevant information about the table by looking at the table or by reading the text. You've probably had the experience of reading a textbook chapter and not looking at the graphs or tables. The graphs and tables are there to help you, but you don't have to look at them oh, sorry, that's bad. Let me correct that. To understand what the author is saying. All right, so don't just plop the table and tell me about it, and don't make me do the work of looking at it, okay? I mean, me as the reader. So what do you need to tell your reader about the descriptive statistics? Since there are only 3 variables, you might as well tell your reader everything about them. All right, what is this footnote about? Well, the footnote says if you're doing a more complex analysis with lots of variables, you probably only want to focus on the ones that are most relevant. You can provide too much information. So completeness is telling your reader everything they need to know, but nothing more. All right, so here's, in addition to reporting the means and standard deviations, you also need to interpret them for your reader. Suppose your variable is life expectancy and the mean and standard deviation are 69.3 and 9.5 respectively. You could just write that. The mean life expectancy for the countries in our sample are 69.3 and 9.5 respectively. Okay. Another way to write this is the mean life expectancy for the countries in our sample is 69.3. Differences among countries are quite large. Okay, so now you're interpreting for me. You're telling me that there's lots of variation among countries. For example, in countries 1 standard deviation below the mean, so that would be minus 9.5, life expectancy is just under 60 years. And I provided the calculation. In countries 1 standard deviation above the mean, life expectancy is almost 80 years. So that's what the standard deviation tells us. We know if it's normally distributed that a big chunk, more than half, almost 2/3 of all the countries will be within 2 standard deviations. And so we're talking about most of the countries when we say the one at the low end of the standard deviation. That's the mean less 1 standard deviation is below 60. And then if I add 9.5 to the mean, I'm going to be at 80 years. So there will be countries with even lower life expectancies and even higher, but I'm taking, this is just a common way to do it. Tell me what the standard deviation is. It gives your reader a good idea about what the standard deviation is, and also it gives your reader a good idea about the range in your data for most countries. Another way to write this is the mean life expectancy for the countries in our samples is 69.3, same start. Differences among countries are quite large, okay? For example, a person in a country one standard deviation above the mean can expect to live for 19 years more than a person in a country one standard deviation below the mean. All right, so those are different ways of expressing the information. This one is kind of inadequate because it just tells the reader what it is without interpreting it for the reader. Okay, so which would you prefer to read? You'll do that with your group. That's like a little rubric that you'll fill out. Okay. The next thing that you'll do is write a paragraph or a sentence or two for each of your variables in your Table 1 document. You'll have to make a judgment as to whether the standard deviation is large or small. You can say things like mean, your x2 variable, does not vary much among our sample countries, especially compared with the large range of values of your x1 variable. I don't know if that's true. I'm just trying to give you the language that will allow you to interpret, like what things are relevant in interpreting. Also, please note that you can copy and paste from this assignment. You are learning to write in economics, and it's fine to adopt commonly used language. Plus, I'm giving you express permission to do that. Save the file and then upload it. Okay, what is this going to do? Well, then you're going to have some text that you can all use in your papers that you'll add to your text from your figures interpretation. And so your data section is going to be filling out very nicely in the writing assignment, your next writing assignment. The last thing you're going to do this week is spend at least 30 minutes peer reviewing this week's writing assignment, just like you did 2 weeks ago. And I'm looking for groups to do 2 or 3. And that's all. Let us know if you have questions.